Hi, welcome to my 5th lecture on the Sicilian defense. Currently I'm still covering the open variations of the Sicilian defense, and the Sicilian defense starts off by e4, c5, and we're still covering the variations that start knight f3. And my last couple lectures I've covered the various openings that then were black played d6. Now I want to cover the variations of the open defense that were black plays knight to c6. So the question could be asked is, why does knight play knight c6? Well, for very similar reasons of why black played d6 is that, one, it helps control the dark squares, and also it prepares knight f6 by black. So, and the other reason is that it also allows black to play not knight, but d5 in one move, meaning in some of these variations we'll see is that black could play d5, but the pawn already on d6, black would play d5, and that in effect it would take 2 moves for black to play 1 move, which is sort of a loss of a move. So those are the basic reasons why black plays knight to c6. So the game normally continues very similar to where black plays d6, is that white will play d4, then black will capture the pawn, white will recapture with the knight. And now we come to sort of where all our forks in the road. So what are the openings I want to cover in this lecture? Well, I want to cover 3, which is usually a difficult task. So the ones I want to cover are knight to c6, d6, and e5. Okay? Here, let me bring up my notepad just to give you the names. So here's our current position, and then I said I was going to cover 3. Knight to f6 is actually called the Sveshnikov. e6, which I won't call cover, is the Taimanov. I'm actually going to cover that in the next lecture. But if you played e6, you'd lead into this variation. g6 is called the accelerated dragon, and e5 is actually called the Kalashnikov. So once again, I probably butchered all the names, but at least you can actually see how to pronounce them. So let's start with looking at knight to f6, the Sveshnikov. So then white plays knight to f6. So why did black play knight to f6? Well, black actually plans on playing e5, helping to control a dark square, helping to control the center. So that's black's plan, is contesting the center. And the normal play would normally continue for this game. Knight to c3, and then e5, which, here's the drawbacks of playing e5, is that it actually weakens this square right here. If you look at it, no pawn can now control for black, no pawn for black can now control d5, which makes it a weak square for black, where white can now place a piece there, and it'll be hard for black to get rid of it or to drive it away with a pawn. So for some central control and some activity in the center, black is giving up the lack of control for this d5 square, but in effect black is now gaining control over the d4 square. And now play normally continues. White plays knight, the knight to b5 here, and then black will play d6. White will play bishop to g5. Black will now play a6, and the knight comes to a3, and then black will usually play b5. And then white usually has the two choices of, or the most common continuations are playing the knight to here, or actually taking the knight here. Okay, so let's move on to the next variation. So let me back up. And oops, I need to back up one more move. I am going to skip e6 to Taimanov for my next lecture. Now I want to cover g6, the accelerated dragon. So if you saw my last lecture on the dragon, the concepts are the same for the dragon and the accelerated dragon. So black intends to play the bishop to here and then put it on what's called a long diagonal. With similar ideas. Now, I did mention in my last lecture that one of White's most popular attacks is called the Yugoslav attack, where the king will castle long, and then White will sort of ram the pawns down here. And I've fallen victim to the Yugoslav attack multiple times and lost. But here, if your opponent tries to play the Yugoslav attack, it doesn't really work for them because black has this option of playing d5. So let me show you that. Well, White plays in Yugoslav fashion, so this is how the game could normally continue. Bishop to g7. White plays bishop to e3, knight f6, and this is the beginning of the Yugoslav attack for White. And then black castles, queen to d2, and now White plays d5. Boom! This is going to equalize for black. Okay, so my time is running low, so I don't want to continue this, but just want to show you one thing that black can play at the beginning of this accelerated dragon, which could cause a lot of problems. Is that instead of playing knight to c3, White could play c4. This is another popular idea if black plays the accelerated dragon. And play would probably continue. Let me show that. So c4, and then bishop to g7. These look very similar to the accelerated dragon moves, so I'm just going through them quickly. In c3, notice, now White has played c3, and this pawn has already been plated as it's sort of stuck behind the knight, and it's helping to control a light square, d5, and then black will castle. White will probably play bishop to e2, d6, then castles. And let me move on to the last variation. Let me back up. So this is our starting point. So then we could play e5 right away. And this is very similar to the Sveshnikov. This is called the Kalashnikov. It has the Kalashnikov, this move, e5, is very similar to the Sveshnikov. But if you think about it, White has not played the knight to here yet, so White could still play this c4 move. So White has many options available to White for plans, since White has not played c3 yet. So play would normally continue very similar to the Sveshnikov of the knight going to b5, and then playing d6, etc. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it there because the play would continue very, very similar. Because if you think about it, with the poking of the pawn, white can easily still play c4. Whoops, c4.